Ruminas soared through the air with determination, showing no signs of exhaustion. Regularly activating sanctuary resurrection would be a foolish act that would make anyone question his sanity if it were his true self. Even though she was using the brains of those who believed in Ruminas to distribute the calculations, no, it was the opposite. She was concentrating all of the results in herself, which was putting an unimaginable strain on her. This battlefield has been transformed into a sanctuary, maximizing the effects of all magic. Even Ruminas would be unable to do this without compensation. However, if we don't do it, we will surely lose. Without anyone knowing, Ruminas continued to support the heroes fighting on the battlefield, hiding pain so great that the term self-sacrifice seemed trivial. Moreover, Ruminas also makes sure to observe the battlefield. They always kept a close eye, so that they could immediately provide support if any areas collapsed. That is why we understand that the situation is not good. The battle on three sides had become even more chaotic as Ivalage servants had become humanized. Ultima is doing well, but other aspects are not going well. Although Shin has also joined the battle in the west and put up a great fight, the situation is far from being advantageous. Despite this, Benimaru, who is in command of the eastern area, is in high spirits. That was only natural, as Benimaru had also noticed Rimyoru's return. Now that their general had returned, they would not be defeated. It was precisely because Benimaru believed this that he was able to command with more daring and terrifying determination than usual. Benimaru's spirit has been conveyed to the Tempest executives. That is why everyone can follow orders with confidence. This kind of atmosphere spread throughout the battlefield, and no one complained, as they accepted Benimaru's instructions after he arrived. What an incredible man, Ruminas exclaimed in admiration. The Humanity Defense Front sounds good, but it is nothing more than an allied force made up of people from different factions. Though there appears to be a certain unity of will, there is a hidden danger that if they make one wrong move, they could become a mob. Of course, if they lost this battle, humanity would be doomed, so it was certainly no time for them to be divided. However, even if they understood this intellectually, if asked whether they could accept it emotionally, they honestly had doubts. If it's for someone you respect, adore, and trust with all your heart, you'll be able to obey any order. But however, if one were to lose their life following the orders of another power, especially one they don't know well, it's not surprising that anyone would fear that they would die a vain death. Benimaru's instructions were powerful, as if to blow away such anxieties. Even when defeat seemed imminent, he guided his warriors so that they would not feel that way. The reason the warriors had not lost heart until now was because of reinforcements from Tempest. Among them, the man named Benimaru made up a large proportion. Ruminas recognized his achievement and was secretly grateful. However, that was the end of his success. An absolute terror was born that could not be contained by strategy or tactics. The boss, Ivalage, had taken on a human form and begun to move. The situation was already hopeless, but then a miracle happened. Ha 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 ha, sorry to have kept you waiting. At this point, Milim decided to join the battle. Milim, have you returned to your senses? Ruminas was overjoyed. I can leave Ivalage to Milim, if we can kill the remaining servants and subordinates. While she's away, we should still have a good chance of winning. Milim's appearance cleared away the atmosphere of despair that had been sunk into on the battlefield. Moreover, other reliable reinforcements had also arrived. Oh dear, I'm not your assistant, you know. I want this to be the last time. Yuki returned, complaining about such things. Of course, the moderate clowns are still alive and well. There's also the demon King Leon. Although he didn't know Lumina's, Zalario was also there. It seemed that even the Magus Order, led by Heavenly Emperor Elmesia and Sylvia, would be joining the battle, and the faint ray of hope seemed to shine like a great light. Moreover, what brought Ruminez the greatest joy was the existence of the hero. Chloe, I'm glad I made it in time. This really has to be the last one. Saying this, Chloe smiled at Ruminez. Yes, that's true. Ruminez nodded vigorously. Yes, we have come this far. They have made it this far without anyone dropping out. All that remains is to slaughter the enemy who wishes the world's destruction and restore peace. If we combine our strengths, no matter who our opponent is, we're no match for them. Ruminez also regained her energy and became enthusiastic about the final battle. By the way, I'm here too. Ruminez was sulking at the eyesore evil dragon Veldora, but she just ignored him. Then reinforcements arrive, and each one scatters to the battlefield where they are best suited. Ruminez, leave the big shots to me. Milim looked delighted as she charged towards Ivalage. Anyone else would have stopped her, but Ruminez had intended to leave it to Milim from the beginning. I'll also go and support Milim, Chloe said, and moved as well. No matter what Ivalage does, I am determined to prevent an unfortunate future. Luminous knows that Chloe can see into the future. I didn't ask in detail about the level of detail, but I still believed what Chloe said. The combination of Milim and Chloe would not lose no matter what the opponent. That's what Ruminez believed. Be careful, because the bottom is unknown. With that advice, Ruminez sent Milim and Chloe of. And so, Yuki and the others went off to help Mai on their own. As expected, that's certainly the only place. Ultima was the opponent in the swim. They were the only ones who were fighting with an advantage. Mai is having a hard time against Habataki. Mai was the most dangerous. Yuki's decision was not based on personal feelings, but was a very appropriate one. And then there's the remaining cliff. Ruminez glared at Veldora. Of course I know that. I had no intention of slacking of, even you had to tell me. Veldora muttered to himself as he headed towards them. Shin, along with Gabuta and Ranga, are working hard against the Keikashi opponents. Keikashi is certainly strong, but he is no match for Veldora. Ruminez also acknowledged Veldora no matter what, so she had no doubts about that. Leon had also joined up with his subordinates, who had been deployed to the south and was hunting down stray cryptids. Zalerio and his subordinates were also helping out. The Magus Corps also joined the battle in the north, where they were being pushed back and helped to rebuild their position. Everything is going well. That's what I thought. But a chill ran down Rumina's spine. What the hell? Sensing a presence that hadn't existed before, Ruminez turned her body around. There stood a handsome man who bore a vague resemblance to Luminous, dressed neatly in a bright red suit and a bluish turtleneck. It was floating silently in the air. Her golden and silver demonic eyes, heterochromia, shines mysteriously, like a counterpart to Luminous. This man was undoubtedly Twilight Valentine, the progenitor god who was supposed to have been destroyed by Carrara's judgment bullet. Just so you're still alive. Of course, right? You are certainly my greatest masterpiece, but I'm not so lenient that I'd allow you to surpass your parents so easily. Twilight smiled and answered Luminous with a detached air. Backing up your heart and memories is the basics, right? Twilight tells her foolish apprentice to teach her. Ruminez was annoyed by his attitude, but there was no question that he was still alive. It was a surprise, but Ruminez knew better than anyone just how troublesome the divine ancestor could be. He swallows his feelings of disgust and begins to think of realistic solutions. Without paying any attention to Luminous, Twilight began to speak unilaterally. It took a while for me to recover, but I'm stronger now than before, so it's no problem. Saying this, Twilight spun the origin blood spear in her hand. It was something Jahil had. I see, Rumina's realized. From the beginning, Twilight must have synchronized her memories with the god. Ancestor's blood spear, origin blood. Even when Jahil was alive, if she had wanted to, she could have taken his body. Although she wondered why she hadn't done so, Rumina's decided that there was no point in worrying about it. That reading was correct. In fact, Twilight had her own reasons. Her heart had been completely converted into information and was residing within Velzard in the form of an authority. Until just now, she had completely believed that she had become a completely immortal being. Twilight is also unhappy with the current situation. He had almost forgotten about the existence of the backup he had left in the origin blood that he had entrusted to Jahil until he was revived. However, it wasn't all in vain. Twilight had lost her complete immortality, but the authority she had acquired. Ultimate ability, ultimate skill, King of Evil Angra Mainyu was still alive and, well, although the current Twilight was not a pseudo-dragon body tie, she boasted an overwhelming existence value as something close to that. There's no way Ruminus could read that far. However, Twilight understands that anything goes. Therefore, Ruminus had already been on maximum alert for some time. Why is Twilight here? I thought I had killed him, but he was still alive. What are you here for? First of all, are they enemies or allies? Many questions crossed Rumina's mind, but she didn't hesitate. The Night Rose sword appeared in his hand, and the next moment he kicked the air and accelerated. Die, destruction spirit slash, melt slash. It's a sword technique that Hinata created, but the original super holy sword technique, Overblade, is a specialty of Rumina's. She'd seen it countless times during her many years of fighting Granbell, and before she knew it, Rumina's had also mastered it. It was a deadly sword move, but unfortunately it had no effect on Twilight. Oh dear, what a naughty girl. You've laid a hand on your parents, you deserve to be punished. Divine Ancestor Twilight blocked the Night Rose's sword with origin blood and grinned. Rumina's clicked her tongue and took some distance in the air. His expression shows no composure. After just one exchange of blows, Rumina's was clearly aware of the difference in strength between her and Twilight. She had hoped that Twilight would be weakened since she had just been revived, but her reaction had dashed that hope. There is no more victory. The reason I was able to defeat it before was because I had carefully laid traps and then ambush it. I couldn't win if I had attacked it head-on, even if I stood on my head. Even though she understood this, Rumina's mind remained calm. I wondered why this was the case, and then I realized the reason. It was a simple matter. If something bad were to happen to Rumina's, Chloe would surely have warned her. Although she may be inarticulate and unkind, Chloe is not the type to abandon a friend. Rumina's has faith in Chloe, so she is confident that she will be able to handle this situation. However, it is also true that reality is harsh. You're still as unreasonable as ever, Chloe. Rumina's complained and began to investigate whether there was really any chance of victory. On the battlefield, Benimaru, sensing something strange about Rumina's, ordered the injured warriors to evacuate. If the resurrection magic were to run out, the casualties would only pile up. Listen, we can't expect any recovery for the time being. Everyone don't make the wrong choice when it comes to dying. Benimaru gave a rousing speech. Don't force yourself to fight. Wait until you are in perfect condition. Only then will everyone be able to make a difference. While the enemy's fighting strength could be held down to less than 1/10. Within the holy purification barrier, if they were to escape outside, that benefit would be lost. That was why they had a defensive front, but in this situation, their original plan was meaningless. After all, the demon Lord Milim and the hero Chloe teamed up and charged into the great hall of Tensukaku to push back Evil Age, who had taken the form of a beautiful long-haired woman in cherry blossom gold and platinum pink. Because a fierce battle is expected, they must have taken care to ensure that it does not affect this world. HMPH, since Milim-sama has already dispatched us, all that's left is the small fry. Leave this to me, and you guys go and eliminate any enemies that we missed. Benimaru said, as he stood at the base of the eastern holy field. The large demonic beast with Evil Age on its shoulder roared loudly at Benimaru. It turned into a shock wave that shook the air, but it was pushed back by Benimaru's haki and aura and dispersed into mist. Hinata and her friends had also defeated many of the higher-ranking individuals who had taken on human form. There were still many left, but none of them seemed capable of escaping the holy purification barrier. It seems like things will work out, but is it really okay? When Hinata asked that, Benimaru laughed fearlessly. Of course. Rimuru-sama has returned after all. I see Hinata smiled. If that's the case, then Benimaru's confidence is certainly understandable. Rimuru-san has returned, I'm glad. Masayuki joined in the conversation. Although he didn't know the details, he thought that as long as Rimuru was there, things would be fine. However, at this point, anxiety begins to arise. But I'm a bit worried. What is it? This is the grown-up version of the child from earlier, but is she my Sasta, should I say, my previous life? Well, it seems she was Rudra's sister, a long time ago. Apparently her name is Lusha, and it appears that she was Mullum's mother. Remembering that memory, Masayuki told him about it. There's no need to worry. Mullum is a strong girl, Vulgrand said. And, he continues, it seems that Tustarasa and the others also made it in time. True to his word, the military forces that had been reduced to ice statues in the former Urasunia began to arrive one after another. Kirkra, Kiran, Frey, Mudla, and Ubra. Mazari and Rain are joined by Moss, Sukka, Gubble, and Jurida. Before anyone knew it, Sa's real body was standing next to Bunama. Our fighting strength has also decreased, but concentrating our efforts on the enemy commander has paid off. They were already a motley crew, so this will make it easier to defeat them one by one. Sa said. True to his word, victory was within reach. Originally, the Kruptuds had no concept of cooperation, only special factions or highly intelligent, rare individuals act in groups. As a result of defeating these superior individuals, the Eidolon beasts, Kruptuds, side lost control. All that was left was for them to eliminate them one by one in groups, and this battle should have ended in a complete victory. However, there has been a change in Uverpch recently. It's impossible to gauge the true extent of his power, but he can only hope that it is an evolution. As for Uverpch, it's beyond our control. We can't do anything reckless. Now that they had come this far, everyone would survive until Rumura arrived. With this resolve in mind, Bunama kept a close eye on the battlefield to ensure no one died in vain. If there is any concern, is Ramana-sama really okay? Luminous, who was watching over the warriors from the sky, was fighting a mysterious man in a red suit. The identity of this mysterious man is unknown, and his power can only be described as eerie. Bunama decided that he could only watch over them for now, but he began to think about who to select to provide support immediately if anything happened. Ruminas fought hard against Twilight, but was pushed back in vain. Despite being thrown to the ground with great force, she quickly got up. She glared at Twilight and rutted her nut rose sword. There was no time to use resurrection magic, but Bunama had handled it skillfully, Realizing this, I was amazed, as expected. However, this is no time to worry about others. Ruminez was the one in the most dangerous situation in this area. Now, Ruminez, this is my masterpiece. Is that enough? I've run into some trouble, so please give me back your power. Twilight said this in a gentle tone. Don't underestimate me. I don't have the time to put up with your plug-tuk-tuk. Musa. With that response, Ruminez fired a crimson flash bomb. This is one of Ruminez's secret techniques, called Demu Blood or Demunuk. Blood curse bullet. It wasn't magic, but a condensed curse using a small amount of blood as a medium. It was both material and spiritual, possessing both physical and magical properties. It consumed little magical power and couldn't be blocked even by Yoaki's ability seal and Tuskal, making it a versatile and all-purpose technique. Ruminez continues to fire Demu blood and Demunuk blood curse bullets, one after the other. However, this doesn't work on Twilight. Achumumumum. It's a really well-thought-out technique, but it won't work on me. Stop wasting your time and hurry up and get to me. Shut up. Ruminez interrupted Twilight and kicked the ground backwards. As Twilight took a step forward, a shining magic circle appeared at her feet. It's a trap-type attack magic circle. The moment Ruminez was slammed into the ground, she hid in the dust and set this up. Then he pretended to run away and lured Twilight in. Evil, destroy it. Sparat disintegration. A sacred pillar of light seals Twilight away. The dazzling mainstream of spiritual particles turned his body into dust. However, Ruminez felt a chill that she couldn't shake of. It felt strange. It seems he didn't have anything. Where did he put his god ancestors' blood? Spear origin blood. When Ruminez realized this, she felt a cold hand on her neck. Ha 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 ha, I told you that information is important, right? My soul is stored in this spear, so there's no point in destroying my body. Twilight was laughing loudly as she tightened her grip around Ruminez's neck. It had completely regenerated by feeding on the body of a dead Kruptud. As long as I don't destroy the spear, this guy is immortal. Ruminez guessed that the spear was syncing its memories was correct, but she couldn't see a way to defeat it. Rather, the fact that she needed to destroy both the spear and the main body at the same time only worried Ruminez. And the situation is terrible. Ruminez doesn't need to breathe, but she feels pain. Her life force is being sucked out through Twilight's palm. It's so delicious. You're the best. Twilight's joyful voice rang in Lumina's ears, almost noisily. It was filled with a sense of superiority, and it irritated Ruminez. That's right. I don't want anyone to interrupt my time with my daughter, so I'll make sure there are no interruptions around here. As she said that, Twilight snapped her fingers. This isolates Luminous and Twilight from the outside world. The space was cut off by the barrier that Twilight had set up. Twilight completed the advanced magic formula in an instant. It was an impressive feat, and there were only a handful of people who could match it. Even those people would have their hands full dealing with the Udalans and Kruptuds, so it was practically impossible to expect any help. You're giving up now, Twilight said with a laugh. He then begins to express his cruel thoughts. But I guess it was a disappointment. It's a masterpiece, but it didn't get as much resistance as I thought it would. Twilight looked genuinely disappointed as she mocked Ruminez. How noisy, Ruminez thought. To begin with, I don't remember ever boasting that my work was my greatest masterpiece. This was just something Twilight was saying on her own, and it was nothing that Ruminez knew about. I also wondered what it was that made it a masterpiece. Ruminez prides herself on being superior, but compared to the other senior disciples, she doesn't seem to have any outstanding qualities. Achumpauch. Compared to the other senior disciples, I was one step ahead in terms of combatability, but that was due to my strong will. The reason I was able to Command Louis and Gunter was simply because I was strong. I can also control. Things like the secret technique of sanctuary. But that comes from a treasure. Trove of profound knowledge, huh? Thinking about it, Rumina's once again felt something was of. Rumina's is certainly strong. Her existence value was over 6 million from birth, making her head above the other senior disciples. He had a wealth of knowledge and was able to apply it to a variety of techniques. And sacred magic. Considering all of these combined strengths, it is no wonder that it is described as the divine ancestor's greatest masterpiece. However, it was not conclusive. In reality, if Ruminas had continued fighting Jahil, who had obtained the blood spear of the divine ancestor, origin blood, there was no guarantee that she would have won. Especially when it comes to the divine ancestor himself, the current situation tells us the answer. In other words, the reason why divine ancestor Twilight declared Ruminas to be her greatest masterpiece was not because of her high combat ability. There had to be some other, more definite reason. And one more thing. Ruminas suddenly had a question. A treasure trove of knowledge, the fantasy library, was a place where various research results were recorded, and which Luminas had been able to access since birth. It does not exist anywhere in this world, and is controlled by the language of the world. How was Luminous able to browse such a fantasy library? Everything seemed unnatural, and even Twilight's true intentions began to seem questionable. The doubt that arose in Rumina's mind quickly grew into great suspicion. You asked for my powers to be returned, right? Does that mean you want to take away my life force? Rumina's asked the question with a resolute attitude, despite the pain she was in. Twilight's power is far greater than that of the current Rumina's. Even if she absorbs Rumina's life force, it is unlikely that her power will fluctuate that much. It would be one thing if Twilight's energy had been depleted to the extreme, but that didn't seem to be the case. If that was the case, there was no urgent need to take away Rumina's life force. So why is Twilight targeting Luminous? Like Jahil, it's possible that his actions were motivated by resentment towards Rumina's, but it would be far-fetched to say that was the only reason. It also doesn't line up with his demand for his powers to be returned, so there must be some other motive behind it. It seemed that within that answer lay a clue that could lead to an answer to the doubts that had arisen in Rumina's. You could say that, but when asked by Luminous, Twilight also looked puzzled. Seeing this, Rumina's realized that something was strange. It seemed that Twilight herself did not understand Rumina's true worth. Why? Rumina's questions grew. What do you want from me? I don't think those kinds of details really matter. The important thing is that you die and become my food, so the reason for that doesn't really matter, right? Twilight stopped worrying and said this nonchalantly. She has an innocent smile and doesn't seem to have any worries whatsoever. That attitude made Rumina's feel even more uncomfortable. To begin with, Twilight is Luminous, that's right, this is all I need. My first name, it's a special name. Given to me by Veldanava, but I'll give it to you. From now on, I'm Twilight Valentine, and you are Luminous Valentine. Ruminous remembers Twilight calling out to her like that. As it swayed in the culture fluid, it was engraved into the core heart as mere information memory. This was a time when my sense of self had not yet developed. The sleeping Luminous was shaped like a shining ball. A vessel created by Twilight that imitates a soul. It has no eyes, mouth, nose, or even arms or legs. It is the source of life just born. Even in that state, being named must have been recorded as his first memory. After that, Luminous grew steadily. Then the final experiment was conducted. I entrusted it to Rumina's. Ah, that's right, Ruminus thought. He remembered why Twilight had called Luminous her masterpiece. Luminous used joint locks to escape Twilight's grasp. Then she stands up slowly and readies her Night Rose sword. Huh, you still won't give up. You're not good at giving up. That is my true worth. Ruminous' agitation had disappeared. Now that he remembered Twilight's true intentions, he was able to guess her. Purpose. I see. Well, you are certainly a masterpiece, but you still can't beat me, you. No, Twilight said with a smile, as if she was amazed at Rumina's arrogance. It gives off the impression of a parent putting up with their child's whims, but there is no love there. All we have is arrogance. Twilight could see through to him the idea that since they were created beings, they should be free to do as they please. He probably doesn't have the vile hobbies of enjoying torturing Ruminas, but if she goes against his wishes, he won't hesitate to go ahead and do it. The difference in strength between Twilight and Ruminas is such that a fight wouldn't even be possible. That would be like a human challenging a god, so it would be foolish to show any opposition. I think everyone would think so. However, Ruminas had a different idea. The free will that we are born with should not be bound by anyone. However, she is not the kind of person who would go out of her way to point out that people are being boxed in, even though they think they are making their own choices. Ruminas was the one who came up with the structure of the Holy Empire, so she does have a cold, ruthless side. If the people pray, their voice will be answered, but if they rebel, the blessing will simply be taken away. Ruminas was someone who respected free will, without being proud or conceited about the things she owned. In that respect, the two were incompatible. Ruminas infused her sword with spiritual energy and slashed again. Twilight easily blocked the attack and slashed back in return. This left Ruminas seriously injured and on the ground. This is a natural consequence, given the overwhelming difference in ability. Why is it that Luminous doesn't understand this, but doesn't give up? This is the very proof that Luminous is a masterpiece. I know full well that you're amazing, so that's enough, right? You idiot. If you're tired of dealing with me, then hurry up and finish me off. There's no point in wasting time, right? Whether it's useless or not is up to me to decide. But why did you think it was your masterpiece in the first place? Without even thinking about it, Ruminas asked a question that got straight to the point. The conversation up to that point had been a setup for asking this question. His goal was to make Twilight think that the conversation was unimportant and get her to talk loosely. Ruminas also knew that she couldn't win. That's why this was a necessary question and answer. I was able to be as bold as I wanted, because Chloe still hasn't responded. No matter how much she concentrated on fighting Avaludge, there was no way Chloe would abandon Ruminas, even though she couldn't understand the situation due to Twilight's barrier. She would have rewound time the moment Ruminas died and given her some warning. It is because she believes this that Ruminas can become ever stronger. Rumina's attitude left Twilight confused. How can one be so arrogant and disrespectful towards one's own creator? That's something Twilight doesn't understand. And I couldn't understand the intention behind the question. That's because you. That's true, now that you mention it, it's strange. Why don't I doubt that Luminous is the masterpiece? Although my conviction remains unwavering, I can't remember why. Confusion becomes an opening. Ruminas was lying on the ground, so he aimed at that spot and slashed. The tip of the sword only cut through the suit, but Rumina's sword certainly reached him. A chumpahach, you're acting all high and mighty and claiming to be my creator, but isn't that just boasting? Or are you trying to make an excuse by saying you were careless? Rumina's instigated. Twilight frowned in displeasure at this. You shouldn't get too cocky. I was planning to give you your power back and make you my subordinate, but I don't need a daughter who rebels against her. Parents, you should know your place. Twilight doesn't care whether Ruminez is alive or dead.